Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron. One of the things that bothers me about some podcasts or just YouTube videos in general, creator stuff, is when they set up a whole episode just to shill one of their products. Like, you can kind of tell right away at the beginning, like, oh man, I want to be upfront and say at the end, this may turn into a shill for one of our products.
Okay.
But it's not, it didn't start out that way. But as I thought through what I wanted to talk about today, it sort of led to one of the things we're already doing. So I just want to get that out front right away to make
It's
sure.
awful convenient, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm not a sellout shill. I'm not trying to just push stuff. I mean, that's what the 4 seconds at the end of this podcast is about.
That's right.
If you listen to the end ever. So one of the things I kind of want to talk about today is I had a really strange scenario last night. We had a thunderstorm. And it knocked out a lot of power. It did some weird stuff to electronics in my house. I got to this point where I couldn't turn on my laptop. I couldn't turn on my MacBook and everything. I couldn't figure out why. Long story short, I just noticed I have a CalDigit dock and its light on the front of it was not turning on. And I thought, oh no, I've blown my dock out or whatever, and I can't connect all my stuff. And so I unhooked the laptop, take it somewhere else. It works fine, thank goodness. And so I go through this whole troubleshooting step. I then told Joel, I called up Joel on Zoom. I'm like, hey, I might be a little slow on our work, or I might not be able to do our podcast because all my dock isn't working. I needed to test the power supply, and I don't really know how to do that. Joel, do you? I have my multimeter, and he kind of helps me and walks me through it. Like, oh, okay, cool. Power supply is good. I think I'm going to have to buy a new dock, but I'm not sure. So we get off the call, and I do some more research. I go over to AI. I'm Googling stuff. I go through Reddit, and I have this timer in my head that there's like 15 more minutes left until I have to decide whether I need to buy another dock to get it here tomorrow from Amazon.
Oh, sure.
Or if I can fix this myself. And luckily, I came into this one little article. This guy had almost a same problem. He's writing a blog post, and he said he was working with CalDigit support. And he told him to do something. Like 2 weeks later, during the RMA process, they came back and said, have you tried hooking it up to another laptop? And why would that matter? Right?
Well, you always have a backup laptop to do stuff like this.
I normally don't. I just happen to have one available to me right now. And so I hooked it up there. The light didn't come on, but it did start powering. Long story short, I'm gonna cut out the boring part of this. Is I ended up, my dock works. For some reason, it was just this weird way of hooking things together that now fixed it. I don't understand why. I'm glad it's working. That's not the point of this. The point is I called Joel.
You did?
I was a little stuck, and I called up Joel. And what was interesting about that is so often we think about when we're working with partners and different programmers and people on our team that they can only just help us with one particular area of, I guess I'll say, life. I'm not saying that we should start asking for life help from each other, but like we sort of get this idea in our head what they also know, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of know where my limitations are. And in my head, I sort of assume that I know where your limitations are because I worked with you.
Yeah.
But I decided maybe not. Maybe Joel does know a little bit more about electronics than I do. And it turns out he does for many different reasons. And so he was able to help me with that too. So a couple of things I wanted to pull out of this. First, I am very lucky to have a business partner like Joel. He didn't know I was going to say this on this podcast. So I'm seeing his face right now, trying to figure out where I'm going and what I'm going to react.
Yeah.
But I'm very
waiting for
lucky.
the other shoe to drop, Aaron, here.
I'm very lucky because it's a person I can work with that sees stuff very similar to me, but differently. So they have different standards, different things. We can kind of go back and forth. And earlier today, we had a conversation, which I'm going to share a little bit about too, where I wanted something changed on a pull request Joel was submitting to me. I could see Joel was like, I don't want to do this. He even crossed his arms. I could see him on Zoom. He doesn't know that he does that, but when
that's
he's upset,
a dad pose. Yeah, that's comfort.
Yeah.
It's not always a guarded position, but anyways, it was this morning, just so you know.
Yeah. Okay. And so I was asking for something that I pretty certain thought would be the right answer, and I was pushing pretty hard on it. But I got to this point where I basically told Joel over and over, I really want this. If you don't do it, that's fine. I will do it, but I think I'm right, and I want you to try it.
Okay.
And so he went through this process, and he did try it. You found some things, sort of followed some of the stuff I said. I'm not always right, but in this case, I really felt I was. You didn't want to do it, and you decided just kind of do it anyway, just to see.
Yeah.
Deep down, I kind of felt like maybe you were giving in a little bit for two reasons. One, just to shut me up, and two, to prove me wrong. Like to
No.
do a little bit of it and be like, oh yeah, it's not as easy as you think, Aaron. That was what my thought was, but I was willing to push forward anyway.
Okay. No, I honestly like to connect this with the earlier story. Part of it was like you were having a morning already. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to do this. Aaron's like over
Okay.
there fighting with his getting his laptop to work. Like, I'll give this 30 minutes. Like in my head, I time boxed it too. It's like, all right, this isn't going to derail my
Yeah,
whole day. I'll try it.
exactly. You're right, right. So, but the interesting thing about that is because I've worked with Joel for so long, I was able to have a sloppy way of communicating my needs and desires to him, even emotional way. And he sort of said, "Well, I know that Aaron will help me with other things, and he's gonna pick up the slack when I have issues." And you kind of we even joked about calling ourselves babies and stuff. Like sometimes you see a thing and you're like, "I'm a baby, I don't want to do that," but
Yeah.
then when you do it, you're like, "That was fine." And
Yeah.
so we've both ran into that. We do that back and forth. So I just wanted to kind of say, like I said, bring it back to two things. One, I'm very lucky to have someone like Joel to work with. And I really think if you're working by yourself, you should probably see if you can find another partner to work with. Even if you're not sharing contracts, even if you're not sharing work, just
Yeah.
someone to bounce these things off of in real time and on video. There's something super important about seeing the person reacting. It's why all these companies always talked about working in person. It's not so much just always control. A lot of times it was, but it's also because there's that additional bit of feedback and conversation and things you see with people. So that's the first thing. See if you can find a person to work with. Hopefully they're as cool and good as Joel. Second is, and I know I'm kind of conflating things here though, but in a way, I talked to another guy, his blog entry. I didn't find that result on AI. I found it from another human being.
Yeah.
Now, maybe AI indexed that and it was such a small amount of temperature and all the weights and all that kind of stuff that it never would have thought it to bring it up until I was asked specifically about it. But I didn't know to ask specifically about it. But I was able to follow what other human beings were sharing with each other because they want to make each other better. And that was really important. So my second point is one of the things I've been sort of struggling with is, should I keep blogging? Should I keep trying to teach people? Because AI just has everything now. But there is something to be said about that, about sharing stuff, micro audiences, just because AI knows everything doesn't mean it knows what you specifically need to know at that time, these different things. So I would say the second thing is like, don't always just rely on AI. Remember, you do have humans and other partners you can talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything, especially the part about me being amazing and super helpful. But yeah, I'm kind of unwinding some of the things you said in my head, and the I just want to pick up on the video thing for a little bit because I will confess, you forced me into this. Like when we first started working together, I'm like I never turn my video on. Like whatever. Like I'll talk to you. Like I'll share screens with you, but like what? I don't have to have my video on. That's stupid. But like
and it by the way, it's a fight. Every single client, almost every single client I take on is this fight, and it's not personal. But I'm telling you, I've seen this, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. No, and I am a true believer now. Like I really do. So I wanted to call that out because I'm sure we've talked about that before on here, but it seems like it shouldn't matter, but it really does. So anyways, that was one thing I took away. But yeah, I like the knowledge sharing thing too in the blog article because that guy probably ran into that weird thing, went through support. Like, why did that work? Like, why would plugging it into another computer? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me, but like still documented it.
Yeah.
And then you found it and you tried it, probably thinking the same thing, and it worked. And it's like, I love things like that.
Yeah, and there's no way that should have worked. And honestly, I don't even know if that's what fixed it. I just know that was the troubleshooting step that got me to the next troubleshooting step that made everything work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but just a little bit more on the sharing knowledge, because I think about the same thing too. I mean, like for Mastering Laravel, we have the daily email. I mean, we make this podcast. Like there are things that we put out into the world. Yeah, exactly. Books, all this, and it takes effort. It is enjoyable. Like there's a satisfaction that comes from it. But then as I see, I don't really watch our search traffic too closely, but as you see some of these things erode, at least industry wide, it's like, why am I doing it? Am I just feeding the AI and then the AI is going to like generalize it and maybe give like a worse version of my answer anyways? But like, it's encouraging to hear stories like yours. I hope you should like post a comment or something. Did he have comments on his blog? Can you give him a thumbs up? Like, hey, this helped me.
There was no comments on his blog.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to go back and be like, hey, that worked for me too. I don't know why, and I don't believe it should. Yeah,
I don't
but
like
it
that this
did.
worked, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you pointed that out, like the sharing information. But then going back to the first part, there's not only sharing information, but it's like, where does that information come from?
Yeah.
And so that information is delivered in two mechanisms: product content created, written, or from
Mm.
a person's mouth or communication. And so that's kind of ties me to that first point, which is like I'm happy to have a person to talk with in real time.
So first of all, I'm bookmarking this episode because when I need a little boost of feeling good, I'm
Yeah.
going to come back to it. And maybe you should bookmark it too, because it's also like you were right about the coding thing, and I did it,
Mm,
and it
yeah.
made things better. But no, just like in all seriousness, like I firmly agree with you that like having another person to bounce things off of is useful. Like it's useful when you agree, like the sanity check, like, am I right about this? Like, does this make sense? And then if you say, yeah, then it's like, okay, I'm gonna move forward. But then even more so, like those cases where there's pushback, I've felt this where it just like at first I'm annoyed, like, Aaron, why don't you just agree with me? But it does, I think it leads to a more productive partnership and relationship, and just like it ends up in a better result. Like if we're talking about code, for example, like it makes the product better. So I echo everything you said, and not just because you said nice things about me, but I feel the same way toward your side of it too. Like there's a lot that I've picked up from you as well.
So I sort of mentioned electronics a little bit. I'm trying to learn electronics a little bit more. So I was setting up a little workbench for myself. I
Nice.
have, various different tools, and I needed a scissors. I don't know what for. So I went to my office, and I have two scissors. I grabbed one, and I brought it over there, and I did some cutting and whatnot. And then I started thinking, like, I like this. I like this electronics setup. I want to keep my stuff separate. So I'm going to have my electronics, and I have my office,
Hmm.
separate locations, all that kind of stuff. And I looked at the scissors, and I said to myself something about the scissors.
Okay.
You ready? I
I am.
said, oh, I should get the other one. This is my nice scissors.
Hmm.
Does that make me weird or old or what? Who has a
Yeah.
like nice scissor? Like, granted, I have two pairs of scissors. One was more expensive and cuts nicer, but who cares? Why do I suddenly have a nice scissors?
It like was your reaction like, oh, this is too nice to use in this context. I should
Yes.
save it for cutting like expensive wrapping paper or something. Like
Well,
what?
yeah.
What?
I should save it for my office, which is my nicer
Mm.
location. This is just electronics, and you dull them on like wires or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
so I know there's a wire cutter too, but I just
Oh, yeah.
have a
Yes.
scissor. And so I don't know why though. It's my nice scissors, and I went back to my office and swapped it out for the other scissors. What's wrong with me? Remember that shilling I did in the beginning? Well, we have all those things on our site.
Yeah. So head over to masteringlaravel.io. Check out our books, our community, get Unstuck Call. All of it's there waiting for you.